If you are going through hard times right now, pause for a moment. Sit with your heart. Feel the weight you have been carrying silently, the tears you swallowed, the questions you never dared to ask out loud, that quiet ache that follows you even when the world thinks you are strong. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones no one sees except Allah. And here is the realization that changes everything. Allah was never absent in your pain. He was never late. He was never unaware. Allah says that He is closer to you than your own jugular vein. Every moment you thought you were breaking, He was holding you together in ways you could not see. What feels like loss to you may actually be protection. What feels like delay may be divine timing unfolding with perfect wisdom. The human heart was created to feel deeply, so it hurts deeply. We grieve, we wait, we feel forgotten. We ask why doors close after we made dua. We wonder why relief doesn't come when we think we can no longer endure. But remember, the Prophet taught us that no pain touches a believer, not even a thorn, except that Allah removes sins through it or raises them in rank. Nothing you are going through is wasted, not a single tear, not a single night you cry to Allah alone. This is what Sabr truly means. It is not pretending that you are fine. It is standing in the storm with a trembling heart and still saying, "My Lord knows." Sabr is choosing not to lose Allah while everything else feels lost. Tawakkul is not knowing how things will work out. It is knowing who is in control when they don't. Allah says that with hardship comes ease. Not after it, but with it. Sometimes the ease is strength you didn't know you had. Sometimes it is protection from something worse. Sometimes it is Allah pulling you away from what would have broken your soul later. Healing does not always come by changing the situation. Often it comes by changing what you cling to. So return. Return to remembrance when your heart feels heavy. Return to dua even when words feel empty. Return to forgiveness because holding on to resentment chains the soul. Trust that Allah's mercy is larger than your mistakes, and His plan is kinder than your fears. The heart that remembers Allah is never truly alone. If you are struggling, know this. Allah is shaping you, not punishing you. He is preparing you, not rejecting you. And one day, you will look back and realize that the hardest chapter was the one that brought you closest to Him. And that closeness, that peace, was always the purpose. Hard times are not signs of abandonment, but invitations to return closer to Allah. When difficulty enters your life, the heart often whispers a painful lie, that Allah has turned away, that you are unseen or forgotten. Yet the opposite is often true. Trials are moments when Allah calls His servant back from distractions, from misplaced attachments, from relying on what was never meant to carry the weight of the soul. Allah says that He tests those He loves, not to break them, but to awaken them. Hardship strips away illusions of control and reminds the heart of its true dependence. In ease, the heart can become comfortable with forgetfulness. We lean on people, plans, and stability, believing they will last. But when those supports collapse, the soul finally looks upward. That moment of vulnerability is sacred. It is where sincerity is born. It is where dua becomes real, not rehearsed. Pain becomes a door through which humility enters, and humility is what brings the servant closest to Allah. When Allah removes what you depended on, He is often teaching you where safety truly lies. The Quran reminds us that hearts find rest only in the remembrance of Allah, not in outcomes, not in explanations, not in certainty. Hard times redirect the heart back to that truth. They push the soul to sujood, to late-night tears, to conversations with Allah that would never have happened in comfort. The Prophet taught us that Allah is gentle with His servants. Even when life feels harsh, His wisdom remains gentle. Every hardship carries a message. Come back, rely. Again, trust deeper. What feels like distance may actually be intimacy in disguise. What feels like loss may be Allah removing what stood between you and Him. Pain is often a form of purification, not punishment. When hardship strikes, the heart instinctively searches for blame, wondering what it did wrong, questioning whether this suffering is a sign of Allah's anger. But Allah is far more merciful than we imagine. He does not need pain to teach cruelty. He uses it to cleanse the soul. Just as water washes away dirt from the body, trials wash away what weighs down the heart: sins, arrogance, attachment, and heedlessness. Allah says that He does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. This means that every difficulty arrives with hidden capacity already placed inside you by Allah Himself. Pain reveals what comfort never could. It exposes sincerity, patience, and reliance. It softens a heart that may have hardened under routine and distraction. The believer is not punished through hardship. The believer is refined. Gold must pass through fire before it shines, and the soul must pass through struggle before it is purified. The Prophet reminded us that no exhaustion, illness, sadness, or grief touches a believer except that Allah erases sins through it. Even the pain that feels meaningless is recorded with meaning by Allah. Even tears shed in isolation are counted. There is no suffering that goes unnoticed, no silent endurance that goes unrewarded. Pain becomes an AC of worship when it is carried with trust. This understanding changes how the heart experiences difficulty. Instead of resentment, there is surrender. Instead of despair, there is hope. Pain becomes a conversation with Allah rather than a complaint against Him. It becomes a means of elevation, a path back to humility and dependence. What the soul loses through pain, it gains in closeness, clarity, and purification. Divine delays are acts of mercy, not denial. When something you desperately ask for does not arrive, the heart often interprets silence as rejection. Yet Allah's wisdom operates beyond the urgency of human desire. Allah says that He knows while you do not know, and what you think is good for you may carry harm you cannot yet see. A delay is not Allah withholding out of indifference. It is Allah protecting, preparing, and aligning events with perfect precision. Often, the soul is not ready for what it is asking. Sometimes circumstances are not yet aligned. Sometimes receiving too early would damage the heart, inflate the ego, or pull the servant away from Allah. So Allah waits, not because He is slow, but because He is gentle. He allows growth to happen in the unseen, shaping character, strengthening iman, and deepening reliance before opening the door. The Prophet taught us that dua is always answered, either by granting what is asked, by delaying it, or by replacing it with something better. Every outcome is mercy, even when it does not feel that way. What feels like unanswered prayer may actually be answered in a form the heart has not yet learned to recognize. Delays teach the soul patience and sincerity. They expose whether the heart seeks Allah or merely what Allah can give. In the waiting, Tawakkul is formed. The servant learns to rest not in results, but in trust. Waiting becomes an act of worship when it is carried with hope rather than bitterness. Allah's timing is never accidental. Every closed door and every prolonged pause serves a purpose written with care. What arrives late often arrives purified, protected, and aligned with a version of you that could not have handled it before. True Sabr is trusting Allah while the heart is breaking. Sabr is often misunderstood as silence or emotional numbness, but Islam never asked the believer to stop feeling. The heart was created to feel deeply, and pain is part of that design. True Sabr is not the absence of tears. It is the presence of trust while tears fall. It is allowing the heart to ache without allowing faith to collapse. Allah sees the struggle that exists beneath composure, the battle between despair and hope that no one else witnesses. Allah says that He is with the patient, not after their patience, but during it. This means that in the very moment your heart feels most fragile, divine support is closest. Sabr is choosing not to speak words of bitterness even when the soul is overwhelmed. It is turning toward Allah when the mind is filled with questions. The Prophet taught us that patience at the first strike of calamity carries immense reward, because that is when surrender is hardest. In Sabr, the believer learns restraint of the tongue, trust of the heart, and discipline of the soul. It is the decision to believe that Allah's wisdom remains intact even when emotions are shaken. Sabr teaches the heart to lean into Allah rather than away from Him. It trains the soul to remain anchored when waves of grief attempt to pull it under. This kind of patience transforms pain into elevation. It strengthens Iman not by removing hardship, but by refining the response to it. The heart that practices Sabr becomes softer, more aware of Allah, more detached from what cannot last. Through Sabr, pain no longer defines the believer, faith does. Healing begins when surrender replaces resistance. Much of the pain the heart carries is not only from what happened, but from the silent struggle against what has already been written. The soul exhausts itself replaying moments, questioning outcomes, and wishing reality were different. Yet peace does not come from controlling what cannot be changed. It comes from placing the heart gently into the hands of the one who controls all things. Allah says that everything occurs by His decree, and nothing escapes His knowledge or wisdom. Surrender in Islam is not giving up, it is giving over. It is acknowledging that Allah's plan is greater than personal understanding. When the believer releases this need to force outcomes, the heart begins to breathe again. Tawakkul allows the soul to rest, not because life becomes easy, but because the burden of control is lifted. Resistance tightens the heart. Surrender softens it. The Prophet showed us that even in moments of deep grief, the believer turns toward Allah rather than away. He cried, he felt pain, yet his heart remained anchored in acceptance. Surrender allows emotions to exist without allowing them to dominate faith. It permits sadness without hopelessness, grief without despair. When the heart accepts what Allah has written, healing unfolds quietly, not always by changing circumstances, but by changing perspective. The soul learns to trust divine wisdom even when it cannot trace it. Forgiveness becomes easier when surrender is present, because the heart understands that nothing was random and no pain was meaningless. Through surrender, the believer finds peace in remembrance, strength in dua, and calm in reliance. Healing becomes a journey of returning to Allah, moment by moment, breath by breath, with a heart that no longer fights what was meant to shape it. Allah's plan is always working, even when you cannot see it. The human heart longs for clarity, for signs, for reassurance that the path makes sense. When life unfolds in unexpected ways, the absence of visible progress can feel like stagnation or loss. Yet Allah's work is not limited to what the eyes can perceive. Much of His mercy operates in the unseen, arranging, protecting, and redirecting in ways that only reveal themselves with time. Allah says that He is the best of planners, and His plan is never interrupted by confusion or chaos. What appears disordered to the servant is often perfectly aligned in divine knowledge. Closed doors, broken connections, and sudden changes are not random interruptions. They are part of a design crafted with wisdom. Allah removes what distracts, delays what could harm, and redirects paths that would lead the soul away from Him. During moments of waiting, it may feel as though nothing is happening, but within the unseen, growth is taking place. Character is being shaped. Faith is being deepened. Reliance is being refined. The believer is being prepared for a future that requires a stronger heart and clearer purpose. Allah does not rush His servant into blessings that could overwhelm or mislead them. The Prophet taught us to trust Allah even when outcomes are unclear, reminding us that the believer's affair is always good. When ease comes, it is gratitude. When hardship comes, it is patience. Both states are gifts, both are signs of Allah's care. Trusting Allah's plan means accepting that understanding may come later, or not at all in this life. It means choosing faith over certainty and reliance over control. Even when the path feels dark, Allah's guidance is already at work, leading the heart where it needs to be. Inner peace is found not in answers, but in remembrance. The Earth naturally seeks explanations when pain enters its life. It wants to know why things happened the way they did, why prayers felt unanswered, why loss arrived without warning. Yet Allah did not design the heart to survive on answers. He designed it to survive on connection. When the heart chases clarity alone, it often becomes more restless. But when it turns to remembrance, it begins to settle. Allah says that truly in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. This is not poetic symbolism, it is a spiritual reality. Dhikr grounds the soul when thoughts spiral. It anchors the heart when emotions overwhelm. In remembrance, the believer is reminded of who Allah is. The most merciful, the most gentle, the one who sees what is hidden and knows what is unspoken. Peace emerges not because circumstances change, but because perspective does. The Prophet taught us to remember Allah in every state, in ease and hardship, in joy and grief. Remembrance transforms loneliness into companionship and fear into reliance. When the tongue repeats Allah's names, the heart slowly begins to believe what it recites. Worry loosens its grip. Hope quietly returns. The soul remembers that it was never meant to carry its burdens alone. Inner peace grows when remembrance becomes a refuge rather than a ritual. It is found in whispered dua, in quiet moments of reflection, in turning back to Allah again and again despite weakness. The more the heart remembers Allah, the less it clings to what it cannot control. Peace settles, not because every question is answered, but because the heart learns to trust the one who holds all answers. In the end, know this. Hardship is not the end of your story, but the beginning of a deeper journey toward Allah. Every tear, every ache, every moment of waiting carries purpose beyond what the eye can see. Your pain is not a punishment, your delays are not rejection, and your struggles are not meaningless. They are the quiet, invisible ways Allah is shaping your heart, refining your faith, and drawing you closer to Him. Trust in His timing. Surrender your burdens and let remembrance be your refuge. Allow Sabr to anchor you when the world feels unsteady, and let hope rise even when the night feels endless. Healing begins the moment you release resistance and place your heart fully in His hands. Remember, no hardship touches you without meaning. No struggle passes without reward, and no tear is ever wasted. Allah's plan is working even when you cannot see it. What feels lost today may be the very path that leads to peace tomorrow. Cling to Him, not to certainty. Anchor your heart in trust, and let the knowledge of His mercy be the calm in your storm. In every difficulty, there is a door to closeness with Allah, a door that opens not with ease, but with patience, surrender, and remembrance. So rise from your pain with faith renewed. Your heart is never alone. Your struggle is never unnoticed, and your journey is never wasted. The one who holds the universe also holds you, and His wisdom, His mercy, and His love are greater than any trial you face. Keep walking toward Him, for in that journey you will find what the heart longs for most: peace, trust, and the unshakable certainty that Allah is near.